All right. Thank you very much. This is public hearing day for. Oh, I'm sorry. Pardon me.
I don't know why we have that echo.
Are we ready to go? All right. Good morning. This is the State and Local Government Committee. We are having public hearings this morning. I've looked around and it looks like we have a quorum of members of the committee here. My name is Ann Matlack. I chair this committee along with Senator Joe Baldacci, who will be joining us a little bit later. The committee is assembled electronically today for the purposes of inviting public comment on legislation. Before we get started, I want to share some information related to the fact that this meeting is being conducted using an electronic format. This meeting is currently being live streamed on the committee's YouTube channel. This means that anyone who is a participant in the meeting via Zoom can be seen and also heard if their microphone is unmuted. People on the Zoom meeting waiting to testify cannot be seen or heard until they are called upon to speak. This meeting will be recorded and available to view on the committee's YouTube channel soon after this meeting has concluded. In a moment, I will have committee members introduce themselves, but before I do, I will ask the committee members to keep their mic muted until I call on them. If the name on your Zoom square is not the name you used to register to testify, it may be a bit of a challenge for us to identify you. For example, if you registered as John Smith or Mary Jones and your Zoom screen says iPhone 6 or Dad's laptop, it may take extra effort to get you to our virtual podium. Please be patient. You should also know that it may momentarily appear as though you've been dropped from the meeting when we call you up to speak. It takes a second or two, but rest assured you will reappear and you will then be able to provide your testimony. This format is new to all of us, and we expect that there will be unforeseen glitches and mistakes. Please be patient. We are doing our best and we will all learn as we go along and hopefully improve along the way. Thank you. A reminder to the members of the committee about the use of the Zoom chat function. This function is not to be used for substantive discussions by anyone. You should know that the chat window can be viewed by any person taking part in this meeting as a participant. Participants includes members of the committee, staff, and any member of the public during their time they have been promoted to participant for the purpose of providing testimony to the committee. All questions of persons testifying will be made through the chair. For each bill being heard today, I or Senator Baldacci will call on sponsors and co-sponsors to speak first. When called upon, you will be promoted from attendee to participant. After presentation by sponsors and co-sponsors, we will call on members of the public based on how they register to testify. For the bill, against the bill, or neither for nor against the bill, but wishing to provide information. When you are called upon, I will ask you to state your name, your place of residence, and the organization you represent, if any. After you are done speaking, and there are no more questions from the members, I or my co-chair will return you to attendee and call upon the next person registered to testify. When you are called upon, please make sure that your microphone is not on mute. It would be greatly appreciated if when you are done offering testimony to this committee on the bill scheduled for today, that you exit the Zoom meeting. You may continue to watch the hearing on the committee's YouTube channel. If you need to exit the meeting before being called upon to testify, please know that you may submit written testimony at any time by accessing the legislature's testimony submission page on www.legislature.maine.gov. This meeting is being broadcast and recorded on YouTube and can also be heard over the legislature's audio broadcast system. Any testimony you submit is public and may be posted on the legislature's website. Today, if you are commenting on any of the bills, you will have 3 minutes to speak, and we will let you know when it's time to start. Again, please keep your microphone muted until you are called upon to speak. Let's see. We have 3 bills before us today. Before we get started, I will have folks on the committee introduce themselves, beginning on my Hollywood Squares lineup with Representative Downs, please. If you can let us know who you are.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Kathy Downs, and I represent District 130, which is Bucksport and Arlington. Thank you.
Good morning. Representative Dorr.
Good morning. I'm Representative Donna Dorr. I represent a portion of Augusta.
Good morning. Representative Copeland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Lynn Copeland. I represent House District 14, which is downtown and coastal Saco, and I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. Representative Reisman.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Walter Reisman, and I represent District 69, which is Bridgeton, Harrison, and Denmark. And I just want to say a quick hi to my former committee member, Danny. Danny, I hope when we have our session next week, you'll bring some goodies for members of our committee. It's only fair. So thank you and welcome.
Appreciate that reminder, sir. Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Kimberly Rosen, Senate District 8. My district runs from Castine through the city of Brewer, all the way up to Lincoln, and I live in Bucksport.
Thank you. Representative Bryant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Mark Bryan from Wyndham. I represent House District 24, part of the town of Wyndham. Welcome all.
Representative Paulus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Sean Paulus. I represent House District 52, which is all of the city of Bath.
Representative Greenwood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Randall Greenwood, House District 82, Litchfield, Monmouth, and my hometown of Wales in both Androscoggin and Kennebec counties.
Good morning. And Representative Toole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Representative Will Toole. I represent the communities in Cutler, East Machias, Eastport, Lubec, Machias, Machiasport, Roque Bluff, Whiting, and Truscott down Washington County.
Good morning. And I'm Ann Matlack. I represent House District 92, which includes the communities of Cushing, Thomaston, South Thomaston, St. George, Matinicus, Creehaven, and the Muscle Ridge Islands. As I mentioned, we have 3 bills today. So unless there is a preference for the order, we will go numerically. Let's see, 434, 446, and 472. So I'll now call the public hearing for LD 434 to order. This is an act to clarify the bonding authority of counties for capital maintenance projects. I believe that is Representative Martin's bill. Welcome back to the committee, Representative Martin.
Good morning, folks. Thank you. Representative Matlock and members of the Joint Standing Committee on State and Local Government. My name is Danny Martin. I'm a state representative from House District 150, located in northern Aroostook County. I'm also a former member of this outstanding committee, and it's great to see so many familiar faces. In regards to the tradition that Representative Reisman alluded to, because of Zooming, I will not be able to comply with that, but hopefully next week I'll be able to offer you folks something. I'm pleased to present on behalf of the Maine County Commissioners Association, LD 434, an act to clarify the bonding authority of counties for capital maintenance projects. The goal of LD 434 is to better enable counties to invest in routine capital projects, including county jail facilities, emergency communication facilities, or registers of probate and deeds. Presently, unless otherwise provided by a county's charter, if a county wishes to obtain any capital borrowing authority, it must go to the voters with a referendum requesting such capital. As I'm sure you appreciate, conducting such voter referenda are time-consuming and costly for counties. To manage these costs are ultimately borne by the county taxpayers. For relatively minor routine capital maintenance projects that are necessary to preserve the structural integrity of county facilities, it makes no sense to allow counties to borrow the needed funds without the hurdles of a referendum vote. It is also important to understand that the authority granted by this particular bill is quite limited. It is capped at 1/10 of 1 mil on the total county's property valuation. So larger counties could borrow more and smaller counties would borrow less, commensurate with their size. This seems like a burden approach to maintaining county facilities, and I hope this committee will see fit to report this bill with an to pass vote. Although I am truly pleased to attempt to answer any questions that my good friend Representative Toole might have, I believe that a representative of MCCA will be testifying on this bill and can better explain why this legislation is needed. I want to thank you. And before I close, Madam Chair, I want to share with you that I miss this great committee and I miss working with many of the folks that I had an opportunity to work with for 6 years. At this time, Representative Toole, do you have any questions?
Old habits are hard to break.
I know.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair.
Do we have any questions for Representative Martin?
Representative Toole is having issues with his microphones.
Okay,
So he's his headphones or something.
okay.
That's probably a good thing, Madam Chair, but he's also muted.
Yeah. Was he able to hear the testimony? Can you determine whether Representative Toole has any questions for us?
Representative Toole, were you able to hear the testimony?
I didn't hear a single thing.
You did not.
Oh, dear.
Let me see.
This is frustrating because this is the first time it's
I'm gonna
happened.
try these, Representative Toole. I'll try these.
Does anybody else have a question for Representative Martin while we're? I have a general question. Do you have perhaps it will be somebody coming behind you that could answer. You reference a percentage of a mill, and I was wondering if there might be a dollar value associated with that, where we have an idea of what the threshold would be for not needing to borrow, not needing to go out for a bond.
Yeah, that's a great question, Madam Chair. That all depends on the size and the valuation of the respective county. So I'm not at liberty to give you what 1/10 of 1 mil would be for each 16 counties, but maybe Mr. Gordon, who will be appearing before me, does. I don't have that answer.
Okay, thank you. Cheryl?
Yeah, he's logging out and logging back in.
Okay, thank you. We'll pause. Well, perhaps we'll continue and we'll let him catch up and ask any questions of Representative Martin when he gets back. Do we have any further questions for Representative Martin? Thank you very much. Can you stick around for just a couple more minutes, sir?
I can, Madam Chair, although I have to appear before another committee here shortly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We'll see if Representative Toole might have some questions. Cheryl, comments? We have 2 people signed up to offer comments today.
Yes, we do. We have Stephen Gordon in favor of the bill and Rebecca Graham against the bill.
Then we'll go with Mr. Gordon first because he is speaking for. Mr. Gordon, welcome to the committee. If you could introduce yourself and let us know where you're from.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, Chair Matlick, members of the Joint Standing Committee on State and Local Government. My name is Stephen Gordon. I'm chairman of the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners, but today I'm speaking in my role as president of the Maine County Commissioners Association. We appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony to this committee in support of LD 434. Briefly, the Maine County Commissioners Association was established in 1890 to assist the Maine County governments in providing vital services to Maine citizens in a responsive, consolidative, efficient, and credible manner. The association is based in Augusta and currently represents 15 of the 16 counties and is governed by a representative board made up of county commissioners from each participating county. Our position on LD 434. First, many thanks to Representative Martin for bringing this bill forward. LD 434, when adopted, will help Maine's counties ensure that public facilities are maintained in a most cost-effective manner. The goal of this capital maintenance bill is to save county citizens property tax dollars by reducing the administrative costs of bond issuance on a relatively small amount of capital. The administrative cost for county bonding by voter referenda is essentially fixed, no matter the size of the borrowing, and as such, it prevents bonding the smaller amounts necessary for maintenance projects, as any savings that might be accrued are eaten up by the administrative issuing costs. In addition, it allows for a leveling of those maintenance costs over a period of years, which more matches the life of the repairs. As an aside, we're just trying to take advantage of similar municipal processes, which we believe the county citizen should be able to also enjoy. Where would this capital be employed? As you may understand, counties have many structures that are aging and entering differing stages of necessary but expensive maintenance repairs. For example, wholesale structural replacement in courthouses and jails, upgrade to communication security equipment and wiring, replacement of HVACs systems and utility systems, etc. To accomplish these expenditures, by utilizing annual operational budgets is essentially prohibited by our state's jail tax cap, and LD1. This bill allows counties to program for long-term upgrades on a scheduled maintenance basis versus the normal emergency breakdown maintenance, repair, and/or replacement. Many of you, especially those in the manufacturing and construction industry, understand the advantages of scheduled maintenance and how it prolongs capital life. Again, and in this case, a savings for the property taxpayer. County expenditures are established by multi-elected officials. The precise path that a county budget takes prior to passage varies somewhat from county to county, but all counties are governed by elected county commissioners with authority over their county budgets. As a public body, all county commissioner meetings are publicized under the Freedom of Access Act, and all votes must be taken publicly and are recorded. In addition, all counties have external budget committees comprised of municipal and/or elected officials who play an important role in establishing county budgets, including determining the amount of capital to be borrowed in any given year. This process ensures that county budgets and borrowing are undertaken in a very transparent manner and scrutinized by the municipalities of each county with careful consideration for the interests of local residents. The bonding amount is limited, as was mentioned. Lastly, as it is important to understand that the authority granted by this bill is truly limited. It is capped at 1/10 of 1 mil on the total county property valuation. So larger counties could borrow more and smaller counties borrow less, commensurate with their size. Thank you for your time, and I'll gladly take questions if the chair so wishes.
Thank you very much, sir. Just an aside, Representative Toole, welcome back. How are you doing with the new headphones? Sir, you're on mute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The headphones are fine. The technology in this bill is another issue. So,
Yeah,
but I am back, so.
Oh, did you have any questions? I don't know whether Representative Martin is still with us, but generally speaking, did you have any questions for Mr. Gordon either?
I do not at this time. I will at some point for Representative Martin before he leaves, as I totally missed his testimony.
Okay.
But if folks want to go through the rest of the hearing and circle back to him at the end, that would be great. If that would leave the chair.
Representative Martin has another place to be. So if we have questions for him, we should do it sooner rather than later. So if you have any questions, any other, Representative Greenwood, you have a question, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to, I think Mr. Gordon might be the person to answer the question you had. I have the same question. Could you give an example of what that dollar threshold would be, say, in your home county?
Yes, because Cumberland County has a charter, we have this option already, and it amounts to about $4 million for us in a year. And I suspect that our county budget is probably the largest because we have the greatest population. So it's going to be less versus the county versus the other counties.
Thank you, sir. And Senator Baldacci is back with us. Senator Baldacci, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Joe Baldacci. I represent Senate District 9, which is the city of Bangor and the town of Herman. I just want to, I'm sorry I came in late. I was at Labor and Housing. Representative Martin, I appreciate you submitting the bill. I may have missed it, but what's the primary reason you think that this is needed for counties to act expeditiously, I guess? What's the primary reason you think we need to pass this bill?
If I may, thank you, Senator Baldacci. Quite frankly, as Mr. Gordon just mentioned, the counties that have charters already have the authority to go to bonding without referendum. I know that Cumberland has a charter and Aroostook County has a charter. Aroostook County had the first charter in the state. Unfortunately, for those counties that do not, let me give you an example. Cities with council form of government currently have the ability to do some bonding within certain limits without going to referendum. And it's for that reason that folks in county government, county commissioners, elected officials would like to do so as well. And I'm not sure if you heard of the presentation that Mr. Gordon just made, but that's very limited to 1/10 of 1 mil. And the question that I was asked is, what does that mean in dollars and cents? And quite frankly, I couldn't respond to that because that would all depend on what the mill rate and the valuation of all 16 counties represent. I hope, Senator, that I've tried to answer the question, but all this bill does is attempts to seek the same authority that towns and cities that have a council form of government currently have.
Thank you very much, Representative Martin. No, that does answer the question. That's very good.
Thank
Representative Matlack, I appreciate you handling the public hearing. Do you want to continue? And I will.
Certainly, I'll finish up with this bill.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Representative Reisman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a question for Mr. Gordon. I was attending a county commissioner meeting in Oxford County, and they were explaining that they're limited because of the cap on funding. And additionally, this amount of 1/10 of the mill rate would probably hamper their ability to borrow sufficient money for a project. So do you have any idea what the amount of the budget is in Oxford County?
I apologize for that. I do not. But if I may, there are two tax caps that we have imposed on counties. One is a jail tax cap, which is really harming our ability to upgrade jails as required by even some of the new state requirements. Because once you bump that limit, of course, you can't do it. The other issue that I would make mention of is the LD1, but municipalities are under that, and we function with that also. What we see here is that this more balances the cost of projects and spreads that cost out over the time of the life, and is probably more fair and more equitable for the taxpayer.
Oh, thank you, sir. You all set, Representative Reisman?
Well, just a quick follow-up. Can you tell me how this type of bonding might help with the fact that the jail now in Oxford County is sending 65% of its inmates out because they haven't got enough room? Would they be able to fix that problem with a combination of the tax cap and the bonding issue? Any opinion on that?
I'm sorry, I don't, because it would depend on the amount of the expenditure. See, this as this legislation is put forth, it's 1/10 of 1 mil. I don't know how much money it would cost them to upgrade their facility to the position that they want. So, without those numbers, I'm be just in the dark.
Madam Chairman, is this something we could have our analyst kind of do a little study on this between the different counties, and also maybe how an issue like doubling the space for inmates, the cost of that? I know that's going to be hard to ascertain.
That seems
Just
to
trying
be
to see
outside,
if these counties
a
can
bit.
afford it.
Well, we can discuss that with the analyst as to whether or not that's within the scope of this bill. Talking about a study of the capacity of the jails is not necessarily what we're after here.
Yeah. Well,
Excuse me.
yeah.
Okay.
Come on.
Okay, thank you. I was going to say you might want to ask your county commissioners how this bill might impact them. Representative Toole, you have some questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess for the work session, something to kind of get a handle on is the mill rate currently for each county, what the dollar figure would currently, if this were to pass. I realize that can be a little tricky, but I think those figures would be an issue. I don't know if Mr. Gordon, I don't know if he's representing a county or an organization, or because I missed the beginning of his testimony, but if that's something he can provide for Lynn, our analyst, and that would be fantastic. But I guess
I was going to say, I believe he is representing both. He's with the Cumberland County Commission, and he's also representing the Commissioners Organization.
Okay, so that's helpful. Would be both to Mr. Gordon and
I'm afraid we're having
is
problems with your video
question.
again.
In other words, I'll turn my video off and hopefully my audio will work.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess my question for Representative Martin and Mr. Gordon is, if with the counties, would you be opposed to turning this bill into a referendum to the voters, or do this bill at the local level and let the county voters and the counties individually decide whether they wish to pursue this avenue? Do you get what I'm trying to get at here, or is the technology?
It's a little bit of a problem, but I believe you were asking whether or not this would be more appropriate as a referendum for individual counties to address.
To allow changing this bill so that it would be so that counties could have a referendum on this issue under these conditions.
Okay.
Is that
All right.
something that you folks should be on board with?
Representative Martin, would you care to answer? You're muted, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Toole, for your question. In regards to the original question that was posed to Mr. Gordon as well, I am certain that the MCCA, the Maine County Commissioners Association, could in fact supply this committee what 1/10 of a mil represents in dollar amounts. And that's something that hopefully they can supply. And it would be very helpful for this committee during work session to have that information. In regards to your second question, Representative Toole, it's the committee's prerogative to do whatever they want with this bill. I was asked by the MCCA to sponsor it, and that question might be posed better appropriately to the MCCA itself. But as you well know, once a legislator presents a bill to a committee, it's their bill. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to respond.
Well,
Thank you, sir.
for that. And follow up if I may.
Certainly.
And to Representative Martin, I promised you no hard questions, so I apologize for that. But certainly to Mr. Gordon, if you could weigh in on my idea of changing this legislation into an option that counties can do a localized referendum one time to push this idea going forward. So in other words, a compromise potentially where a county could opt to do this as opposed to having this on the books that counties can automatically do it without the consent of the voters.
I believe that's something we could, now that you brought it up, we can discuss at our work session and ask Mr. Gordon to come back and chat with us about it.
Sure thing.
All right. Senator Baldacci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to ask Mr. Gordon a couple of things. One, from a practical standpoint, Mr. Gordon, will this limited borrowing authority for capital maintenance projects cost taxpayers more or save them money? Can you answer that question?
Sure. From our aspect, because what we're looking at is capital maintenance, not just increasing the capital of the county with a new project, because those projects generally are within the realm of going to the public, and as it should be. These are to repair things such as the roof of a jail, et cetera. And if we're trying to do that within the restrictions that we have presently and can't borrow it so that we can level it out over the life of the project, what happens is we end up doing pieces of the roof at a time at different times, which is very inefficient. Probably the better example I can give you is one from Cumberland County, is that we had to repair the flooring or the decking of the parking garage. And we were doing it piecemeal that way. And what we found out is that it was costing us about $100,000 a year. And the contractor would show up, get himself set up, work for about 4 hours, and then that was the end of the cost, because all the cost of going into the project and getting out of the project was eaten up versus what the work was done. So it's to get the capital to do those projects so we could spread it out over, as the roof would example, for 20 years on a jail and get it done versus and eliminate all that physical work of getting the project started and breaking down the project afterwards, plus not having to go to the market with all the administrative requirements of the vote. It's really something that's worked well for us in Cumberland County, and I believe is saving a lot of money for the ratepayer, because I'm a utility person, for the taxpayer, for the property taxpayer, because they don't have all this administration that they're trying to pay for.
Okay, and instead of doing it piecemeal. The other question I had was, there's still a public review process. Even if we approve this, these items will still be involved in a public review process through your county budget committees. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. As I tried to mention in my opening remarks, that not only do we have a budget, our own internal budget controls and presentation to the public, but there's also counties have external committees that are required, that are either elected or municipal officials choose a group of municipal officials to overlook our county's budget and approve them. So it's not as if that they're not given scrutiny. They're probably more scrutinized than any governmental budget we've got.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gordon. Appreciate
Thank you. Appreciate
Ms.
it.
Copeland, you had your hand up. Did your question get answered?
I do have several questions, but I'm wondering if we heard from Ms. Graham that they might be answered.
These, right about now, we're asking Mr. Gordon questions. So if you have specific questions for Mr. Gordon with regard to his testimony, otherwise, if you have questions for Ms. Graham regarding hers, you can wait a second or two, and we're going to hear from her next.
All right, and I understand that Mr. Gordon has to get going, and I appreciate.
No. Mr. Martin does. Mr. Gordon's here for a little bit longer.
Oh, okay. All right, well, thank you. Then, well, I'll wait.
Okay, thank you. Representative Martin, we're happy to have you stay as long as you want, but we'll understand if you have to pop off at some time in the future.
Thank you, Representative Matlock. No, I really need to go. I've got to present another bill before IF&W shortly here. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for being patient with everyone.
Wonderful to have you here again, sir. Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Rebecca Graham from the Maine Municipal Association. Ms. Graham, please.
Thank you, Representative Matlack, Senator Baldacci, and members of the State and Local Government Committee. My name is Rebecca Graham, and I am offering testimony in strong opposition on LD 434 on behalf of the 70-member Legislative Policy Committee from MMA. Municipal officials felt really strongly that they hold value in asking the taxpayers directly to support bonding measures. They do this on a regular basis for fire trucks, for police cars, for roofs, multiple different buildings that they have to maintain, unless they've been bestowed by those same taxpayers directly the ability to do it in limited ways. That process is a really vital democratic principle, and it's one that the counties already have under the same authority. The counties can use the budget, the charter amendment and adoption process to either ask those taxpayers who ultimately pay that directly for that authority and make that case to them directly. And I would argue there's nothing more accountable than having someone go line by line through a budget at a municipal town meeting and tend to haggle more over $100 library fees than they do over $10,000 roofing fees, if you've ever sat through one. So we believe that the counties already have the ability to actually do this and address this, and are concerned that it seems to be an attempt to kind of circumvent what is a challenging process. But even under that, if you do that circumventing, and we've talked about jail funding, for instance, it further removes the pressures that are facing counties under the duties and obligations that they have from the view and from being able to engage with their county voters to be advocates to support what are essentially state burdens that counties are assuming. With the budget process, 50-50 counties are split between the county commissioners having final budget authority. So while they may have an external budget committee, that final authority lies with the commissioners, whether or not they accept those recommendations. And then 50% have the external committee as the budget oversight. So there isn't uniformity within that final authority either. So while we understand all the pressures that are affecting the counties, we've actually worked in criminal justice on a jail funding bill that we think will allow the counties some latitude, particularly with those facilities, as well as the opportunity to raise the cap that they are struggling under right now. But that process, again, maintains this connection between the pressures that they're facing and ultimately the people who can actually relieve some of that pressure. So we're also not interested in doing that, but we're particularly not interested in allowing counties something that municipalities don't have and feel is a vital process, because ultimately it's the property taxpayers who have to fund that bill. And with that, I'm happy to field any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Graham. Representative Toole.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Graham, for your testimony. I know as a town official myself, I'm sensitive to the concerns that you raise. And with that, I'll ask you the question of, do you feel that the towns, if this bill passes, do you think towns would have adequate checks and balances or adequate veto power, as it were, if it passes as is?
Representative Toole, I can tell you what I've learned through the jail funding process and heard directly on a number of occasions when we've pulled municipal officials about certain provisions of that. Largely, the jail funding budget is a rubber stamp. it's really challenging for anyone to cut services to a facility that the individuals inside are 100% dependent upon the delivery of those services. So there's not really a lot of wiggle room in there. And there's not a lot of revenue assistance. But what we've also heard is that many municipalities don't understand what they're paying for when they receive the bill from the county, and have little, or feel as though they have little or no control over that process or input in that process. And if you take that one step further, it's the same with the individual who's making that payment. It's the municipal officials that end up getting hit with, why is this going up? Why are we paying that? And they don't actually always have those answers. So we're hoping that with the jail funding bill, we can at least increase some sort of transparency. And we understand that the relationship building piece is a challenge with the counties, and that it's much easier at the municipal level because people come in and are angry to their municipal officials on a regular basis. County government is a step further away and often lives in rather than in your community, in the county seat, which is not always accessible. And again, is probably a lower understood section of government as well.
No, I thank you for that. And I certainly have experienced that in our own area. You know, there is definitely that push and pull between the counties and the towns. And I think as it relates to this bill, what I was getting at is, should towns have, for lack of a better term, veto power? And do you see that in the current situation right now with how bonding is done versus if we were to change the law and pass this bill, do you see that veto power being eroded?
I mean, I can imagine from the taxpayer perspective that ability to have and weigh in on those conversations has been removed. I think that if they use the charter amendment process or their charter adoption process, that the same that municipalities have, then they have the ability to make that case to the people that are paying that bill. And they have the ability to explain all of those pressures and thus create not only relationships, but a whole bank of advocacy folks that can come to the state and during the legislative process and say, what are you doing? MMA tends to do that with our municipal officials quite frequently on bills that are of significant municipal interest. And I think both can be achieved through a single referendum. You can adopt the charter and you can ask for that authority.
Right. So essentially, you don't feel this bill is necessary, that in the process it's already in place, that whole thing can be gotten to, both at the county and at the municipal level. My technology is cutting out.
Yeah. Currently, they have
everything.
I'm sorry, you were answering Representative Tools, ma'am?
Yeah, currently counties have all the same authority to establish these procedures under the same authority that municipalities have.
Thank you, ma'am. Representative Copeland, you had said you had some questions.
Yes, I have my city councilor hat on, and I'm trying to think of how this process works. And you know, I'm always looking for taxpayer input. So the taxpayer input here, it kind of looks like it's usurped, but I don't know. I mean, the county commissioners are elected, but well, let me ask, what is the taxpayer input level on this then, if I need to ask a question?
Well, with the bill as written, there wouldn't be.
Thank you.
And are there any purchasing guidelines? So, you know, if there's smaller communities that don't really have a setup and somebody's brother-in-law always gets something, I mean, that's always something that's a problem. are there any guidelines set up in this so that it would go out to bid, just like any other municipal bond would?
How about we let Mr. Gordon address that one?
Thank you. Yes, certainly there is. It would follow any other purchasing procedure, which generally falls in line with what the state has. So absolutely, we do nothing that that the state doesn't recognize as a proper procedure. I disagree with the issue of there being no oversight, because during our budgeting process, what we're going to bond and spend, where we're going to spend our money on our projects, is certainly open to the public. They get their opportunity to speak on that. And then, as I made mention, which municipalities don't have on top of them, is an external committee, which is made up of municipalities. So I don't know what further more input that they wish to have for oversight to allow us to do this. All we're asking for is to allow us to have a process by which in small amounts that we need to go to the market for, so that we can have capital to do these large maintenance projects, we eliminate the administration cost and thus the cost to the taxpayer. That's the whole essence of the bill.
Okay.
I'm wondering if there's any structure like there is in a municipality that, a financial auditor would come in and say that you have to have like 16% set aside for contingencies, so that supposing your $800,000 boiler in the middle school goes, what do you do? So are there other structural procedures in place that could be used instead of this?
Well, I'm hesitant to answer that, quite frankly, because I don't know all the counties. I mean, I have no idea what their processes are. Generally, counties run pretty thin budgets, and there isn't much held in reserve, because they have no way of doing that, or they don't do that. And as a result, they struggle when it does come to a big maintenance project. And that's when they get in, I was going to say in trouble, but it's not. That's when they have to go to the taxpayer and say, we've had this project or this piece of capital fail, and we now have got to replace it, and therefore the amount is this. What we're trying to do is to get in on the front end of this and say, look, let's repair the roof rather than let it rot through. Let's do this, et cetera. I mean, I'm sure you understand, especially if you're in a municipal function.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm wondering, before a roof falls in, generally there's, oversight of the properties, and you can see that things are coming down the road, and you would, go through a normal process at that point and plan for it, rather than just wait for an emergency and quick bond.
Well, as I tried to explain once before here, how you would do it when you had such a large expenditure is you end up doing it in piecemeal. And that's very inefficient use of capital. And it costs the taxpayer more money. And we're just asking to be able to do it efficiently. And we're not, these projects aren't huge. They certainly are to an individual, because they don't deal in those kind of monies. But these projects are not huge compared to relatively to the other projects, like building a school or building a facility for emergency communications and et cetera. This has got nothing to do with that. This is
I certainly understand that.
This is a very small amount. It's 1/10 of 1 mil.
And I look forward to seeing what those actual numbers are. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions with regard to this topic? There being none, I thank you both for coming to talk with us, and I'll close this public hearing.
Thank you, Chair Matlack. Our next item, I believe, is LD 446. Is that the next item? We have
Yes,
on
it
our
is.
agenda?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And that is an act to reestablish the state planning office. And is Representative Kyle Bailey here?
He's coming.
Okay.
Would you like me to let 3 in at a time as we go through these?
Are they for or
We have a bunch for and 3 neither. No against.
how many for? Yeah. if
8
you-
counting Mr. Bailey.
Okay. Yeah. If you want to do 3 at a time, that's fine.
Sure.
Representative Bailey, good morning. Welcome to State and Local Government.
Morning.
You're sponsoring this bill, which I'm one of the co-sponsors, to reestablish the state planning office. We have received written submissions with various positions of different entities. Why don't you take the floor and tell us what this is all about?
Great. Well, good morning, Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlick, and distinguished members of the State and Local Government Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present LD 446, an act to reestablish the state planning office. As some background, I approach this issue in thinking about how we recover from the global pandemic and recession, respond to demographic, climate, and opioid crises, reckon with centuries of injustice, and ensure that we make our state an even better place to earn a living and raise a family. I see that Maine's executive and legislative branches really need to partner to bring together leaders from across the state and political spectrum to engage in visioning, collaborate with municipalities, economic development corporations, land trusts, councils of government, regional planning commissions, and other stakeholders, provide expertise and resources to build out and scale up local and regional plans, incentivize innovation and make smart investments in physical and human capital, and maintain bipartisan commitment across administrations and legislatures to implement plans that will solve Maine's toughest challenges. Thanks to the leadership of Governor Mills and the hard work of Director Pingree and the Office of Policy Innovation in the Future, Commissioner Johnson and the Department of Economic Community Development, the Economic Recovery Committee, and many individuals in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, Maine has an economic development strategy for the first time in many years. And thanks to the hard work of the Maine Climate Council, we have a strategy for addressing climate change. Under the leadership of Director Smith, we have a strategy to address the opioid crisis. The development of these and other roadmaps are necessary first steps to building out plans and scaling up the work that will create opportunity and prosperity, improve quality of life, and ensure that we leave Maine a better place for our children and grandchildren. The next step requires ensuring that our state has the infrastructure in place to fully engage in the extraordinary amount of planning and implementation work that's going to need to be done at all levels to ensure that we're successful in achieving our shared vision for a better future. The 186 members of the Maine legislature must play an active role in this work to align state policies and budgets with our priorities and collaborate with the executive branch to share responsibility for achieving better outcomes as a co-equal branch of government. I really believe that change comes from the bottom up and not the top down. In many policy areas, our state can have its greatest impact by incentivizing innovation. There is a limit really to how much progress the state can make without engaged and active participation from local communities. And that's why I've introduced this bill to recreate and reimagine the state's planning infrastructure. Because right now there's a real deficiency in planning support for municipalities from the state. And I think it threatens to undermine our best efforts to solve problems. So the State Planning Office version 2.0 would operate as a one-stop shop for local governments and their partners to access planning expertise and resources, and is a vehicle for the state to incentivize action at the local levels through the use of carrots and not sticks, to work towards statewide goals for growing Maine's economy and addressing climate change, among other planning priorities. We know from experience that it is only when we collaborate with communities and incentivize the building out and scaling up of local and regional plans that we're really able to address economic, demographic, climate, and health challenges. The SPO 2.0 would exist differently from the 1.0 version. It would not exist as a bureaucratic agency to impose new regulations. On the contrary, it would exist to eliminate barriers and make state government resources accessible to communities. For rural areas and small towns that are presently underserved, the State Planning Office 2.0 would provide the assistance that they presently lack to identify and compete for grants for downtown revitalization, infrastructure projects, carbon reduction initiatives, conservation preservation, and the like. You know, throwing it against the wall and seeing what sticks and imposing new regulations and unfunded mandates are haphazard and counterintuitive, albeit well-intended, approaches to problem solving that most often fail to generate better outcomes. The State Planning Office 2.0 would help us ensure solid planning, better implementation, and improved incentives to bring about needed change. I hope that sharing this vision for reinventing the State Planning Office is helpful in deliberating the merits of this proposal. I'd really like to thank the co-sponsors of this bill, starting with the members of this committee, Senator Baldacci, Representatives Bryant, Copeland, Dorr, Paulus, and Reisman, as well as Representatives Warren, Harnett, and Sachs. And I'd also like to publicly thank the planners and advocates who I've spoken with over the past several months and who have informed my thinking on this issue, some of whom are here to testify today and can really get into some of the nitty-gritty questions you may have about planning and the importance of the planning process and some of the history of Maine's process of planning. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today and to present the bill.
Thank you, Representative Bailey. Any questions for Representative Bailey? Representative Toole?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my question is pretty simple, or two really. It's, so how many people are we looking at hiring and how much are we looking at spending?
That's a good question. You know, my bill, there was a lot of statute previous behind the State Planning Office. My bill is a simple bill to bring back the office. I think there's a lot of work and planning that would need to be done by the executive branch and others to determine what actually is needed in terms of number of staff and where that staff is best suited to operate from. And so I think this is a first step towards reinstituting that planning process. And I don't know that we have a definite answer for that at this moment. I think it involves really bringing together those stakeholders in the planning process because I think we've really neglected the planning process in our state for a long time. And I think we need to bring those stakeholders together to build that out and probably come back to the legislature as this office moves forward with a budgeting process to look at numbers of positions and really understand in a more detailed way where we're providing that support and what's going to best suit the regions of our state and localities in terms of getting those services to them.
Okay. Representative Toole, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm trying then to understand. So this bill, your goal is to kind of have a study or a meeting of the minds, so to speak, as opposed to actually reestablishing the office and hiring staff? Or, I mean, I guess I'm a little confused as to where we're going there.
Yeah, it's a good question. My bill simply brings the State Planning Office back, and in its current form puts it under the purview of the governor's office. And so there would need to be discussions about how to budget and what positions to budget for. Probably bring that back to the legislature as perhaps part of the supplemental budget next year if this were to pass and become law in terms of implementing the State Planning Office. So I think that's probably where those conversations would really begin. And I think in doing that work and in bringing those stakeholders together for those conversations, I think we might find that there might be more support that needs to be done at the regional level through regional planning commissions, et cetera. I know you're going to hear from some other folks who are testifying today who have some thoughts on sort of how to approach this. I mean, I think there's some folks testifying today who actually would like to see us do a full-on study of this issue. And so there's some different perspectives and probably some different ways in which we could go about doing this. It's a good question. Do we implement the office, have the governor hire or move staff there initially and then map out that proposal and bring it back with a supplemental? Or do you do a study initially? I think there's several different directions the committee could go in if you're interested and share my concern that we're not doing enough when it comes to planning and having the infrastructure in place to support our communities and implementing these great plans that we have at the state level, but that I think in the absence of that infrastructure for planning, we'll have a challenge in meeting our goals and eventually moving Maine down the path that I think we all want, which is more prosperity and opportunity and healthier citizens and better outcomes across the board.
Okay, any other questions for Representative Bailey? Okay, Representative Bailey, oh, I'm sorry, Representative Dorr.
Morning, Senator. Now the planning office was eliminated during the last administration under Governor LePage. Why did he eliminate it? Do we have any facts to why he did that and what his reasoning was?
You know, I don't want to speak for the former governor and anyone's motives or whatnot. I can say that I believe there were, and perhaps others can speak more fully to this. There has been legislation over the years. Had been legislation over the years to do away with the state planning office. In my conversations with planners and planning advocates, I think, including the Maine Municipal Association, which perhaps is here today to talk, I think there's conversations about over time that perhaps the state planning office evolved or devolved, depending on your perspective, into sort of a quasi-regulatory agency that became somewhat burdensome for municipalities. And I think there's a fear or some initial conversation about this with some reservation about would it become that again? Or is that what I was proposing, which is actually the reverse of what I'm trying to propose here. So I think that there's a history and maybe some bad blood over the years with some regulatory functions, if you will. That obviously, I hope my testimony made clear that is not my intent, nor do I see that as being the goal of this. I think we have a real opportunity, I was sort of using that 2.0 language, to really reinvent what the state planning office is and how we provide the support to communities and take these great plans that we have at the state level and build them out and scale them up from a local level to make sure we're hitting our benchmarks as a state and ultimately our goals to move us in the right direction.
Thank you, Representative Bailey, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Dorr. Any other questions? Okay, Representative Bailey, thank you. I think Amanda Bunker is the next speaker. Is that correct?
Actually, we'll have Hannah Pengree because she's from the Governor's Office of Policy, Innovation, and the Future.
Okay, well, she's not for or against, right?
I'm sorry. It was my understanding we accepted the departments.
Okay. Okay, my pleasure. Ms. Pingree, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlock, members of the State and Local Government Committee. It is great to see so many familiar faces calling in from the basement of North Haven today. I am pleased to be here to testify neither for nor against LD 446, an act to establish the state planning office. I am very grateful for Representative Bailey for bringing this conversation forward because I think it's an important one. I'm not going to read my testimony. I assume you have it. If you've had a chance to look at it, I actually think the last page of that is a report from the most recent Climate Council report, Maine Won't Wait, we put out, and it actually, I think, is a helpful sort of speaks to what Representative Bailey spoke to, which is the challenges that Maine communities are facing when it comes to planning. So just a very quick introduction again. I am the director of the Governor's Office of Policy, Innovation, and the Future. We are an office that was actually created by this committee in 2019. So just the quick history of it, I think as you noted, Governor LePage eliminated the state planning office in 2012, but created the Office of Management and Budget. And about 5 FTEs remained in that office. Many of the other functions of the former state planning office went to other components of state government. So several positions at the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry, some positions like the coastal planning work in the Department of Marine Resources, some positions in the Department of Environmental Protection around solid waste. So obviously, and also I would say the Office of the State Economist, which is now at the Department of Administration and Financial Services. So the former functions of state planning still exist in other components of state government, not in the same full number of FTEs, but they live elsewhere. So the governor in 2019 created our office to think about long-range planning issues, one of the first charges of Representative Bailey's bill. Our current areas of leadership include climate and energy policy, including management of the Maine Climate Council, opioid response and prevention. Gordon Smith is in our office and obviously leads cross-cabinet work on opioid response, also traveling around the state of Maine. We host the Governor's Children's Cabinet, which focuses on early childhood education and policy for kids and youth. And we also have supported a variety of economic innovation and workforce development policies. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, our office has also provided planning, policy, and communications work to the governor. And we also manage the governor's Economic Recovery Committee. So obviously, I would just say that a lot of the work is important. We are a small staff with currently 8 FTEs with a large charge and a lot of important issues. As it relates to specifically supporting the legislature, we work in partnership with the legislature on many of these issues. I think many of you know the Maine Climate Council includes many members of the Maine legislature on every single committee. There are currently 8 committees and working groups, lots of other areas where we specifically work with the legislature. We overlap on a lot of policy, whether it's economic recovery or climate. So specifically with the elimination of the state planning office, I will say there is not one single government agency responsible for the third function that Representative Bailey highlights in his bill. It's specifically administering financial and technical assistance programs to help build sustainable communities. Again, some of these functions are elsewhere. The current Municipal Planning Assistance Division is located at the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. I think there are 2 FTEs that serve in that role. They're great staff with a huge challenge in front of them. So specifically, the Maine Won't Wait December 1 Climate Action Plan did ask over time for us to expand resources to support communities to plan for and reduce their risks, specifically from climate change. We know that towns, again, as illustrated by that chart, have extremely uneven access to planning resources across the state, whether it's on climate issues or other planning issues. The plan specifically recommends that the state provide robust technical assistance and funding to communities by 2024 to support local and regional climate resilience initiatives. But I would say that climate is only one of a variety of issues that communities are currently struggling with. I think this committee is extremely aware of the variety of land use planning challenges, economic development issues, housing issues, a variety of issues that currently face Maine communities. I will say our office has specifically undertaken a pilot program. We currently have an RFP out to work with communities across the state of Maine, specifically on climate resilience planning and implementation. And the purpose of this climate planning project, pilot project, is specifically to better understand what would be helpful to communities. I think that Representative Bailey's comment about how we incentivize and support communities rather than, you know, the big stick of state government in terms of telling people what to do is incredibly important. So this pilot project will run through the course of this year. It's funded 100% by philanthropy. And the overall goal is to best understand what do communities need in different parts of our state, both inland and on the coast, and what kind of tools and funding mechanisms are needed specifically around climate issues. So again, this is sort of one slice of the challenges that communities are facing. We absolutely would love to report back to this committee on how that pilot goes, what we've learned from the process. We are working closely with both the COGS and the Maine Municipal Association on this pilot. And again, I think it will provide incredibly important and valuable information about the changing environment and what communities specifically need. I will just say that this pandemic has certainly significantly impacted the state budget. And in the current budget context, the governor's office does not support a new office and new FTEs. But I will say that over the course of the coming year, further evaluation of the former state planning positions and programs now distributed across other state agencies, as well as emerging needs, should be considered. The sponsor's third goal, to provide financial and technical assistance programs to help build sustainable communities, is certainly worthy of ongoing consideration. I think it's, again, as he noted, a conversation that the legislature should certainly weigh in on, and the executive looks forward to working collaboratively with you over the course of the coming year. So I'm happy to try to answer any questions. Again, I am very grateful for this conversation. I think it's an incredibly important one. Over the course of this pandemic, my office has specifically engaged on a near weekly basis with Maine Municipal Association, as well as mayors across the state. And I think it has just elaborated the need for more conversations, more collaboration, and really incredible work happening at the local and regional level, but just a need for ongoing collaboration to make sure this work is really improving the lives of communities and people across Maine on a regular basis. So thank you so much. And again, happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Ms. Pingree. Are there any questions? One thing I would ask our analyst maybe to provide during the work session is it might be helpful to have a copy of what the committee approved in terms of Ms. Pingree's office 2 years ago, so that we can look at the mission statement and the concept and functions that were authorized, so that we're not, duplicating things when we consider this office or the planning function in general for state government. Representative Matlack?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Pingree, do you see the work of your office and what's being recommended by Representative Bailey as being somehow enmeshed, and that they can you can work collaboratively together to also produce the outcomes? I look upon this time as one of reevaluating how we have done things in the past, and then not just continuing on with them, but moving forward with how we use our resources going forward. So I'm wondering if you think of this as an opportunity to reevaluate how state planning might have worked and how it should look in the future.
Yeah, I think, Representative, that's an excellent question. Just to Senator Baldacci's earlier point, I encourage you to go to our website, maine.gov/future, just to understand the mission of our office and the areas of work. And again, certainly there is a new section in Maine law that outlines the specific statutory duties of our office, and we're happy to share that. So Representative, just to your question, I mean, absolutely, I think this should be about not rebuilding an old office, but re-envisioning the work that is needed. I think that we are already underway in a couple of areas of work on economic recovery and specifically climate issues, where we're talking regularly to communities and thinking about their needs and how we envision really technical support, planning support, and really, I mean, funding opportunities are going to be the most important ones moving forward. How does the state work with regions and towns to prepare for all of the challenges that they are facing? I think it really should be about incentives and collaboration and assistance, rather than sort of a lot of top-down rules coming from the state of Maine telling folks what to do. I think we certainly have learned some lessons in the past about how to do that better. I would say specifically this pilot program we have underway, again, it will really get started after the RFPs come back later this spring. I think it will provide some good on the ground collaboration with communities. Again, I would say the coastal program at Marine Resources, the work at DACF. I mean, again, we've been in collaboration with those offices and talking to them about how we better bring this work together. We do talk regularly, but I do think in the coming 2 years, we do need to envision a more organized and careful approach that is incredibly supportive of the hard work that towns and regions are trying to do to confront all of the issues that I've talked about on climate, but also things like housing, economic recovery. So the bill that Representative Bailey put out there, I think, is non-specific in terms of number of FTEs, how we would approach it, the exact function. So I actually think it leaves open sort of a good door of conversation. I do think the suggestions of either a carryover so that we can see how some of these other issues play out, or a study could make a lot of sense.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Ms. Pingree? Okay, hearing none. The next speaker is Amanda Bunker. Thank you, Ms. Pingree. Amanda, can you unmute yourself? There's Amanda Bunker. Okay, I don't. Amanda, have you unmuted yourself? Cheryl, can you unmute Amanda Bunker? There we
Yeah,
go.
sorry, no, I'm here now. It just, for some reason, it just booted me out back to webinar and I wasn't,
Okay, we've got,
didn't have my mute button available.
even though
I'm here
it's
now.
perfectly fine, you're kind of sideways right this
Oh,
way.
sideways. Okay, I can fix that.
There we go.
Hey, adaptability.
There we go. Right side up.
All right.
Amanda, can you're here for LD 446, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, you have the floor.
thank you very much. Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, committee members, my name is Amanda Bunker. I'm the president of Maine Association of Planners, or MAP. We have over 150 members right now, planners in the public sector, private sector, nonprofit, and also what we call planning allies from related fields who also have interest in the field of planning all over Maine right now. On behalf of MAP, I would like to share our support for LD 466. We support the concept behind this bill that more meaningful planning resources and policy development and reform is needed at the state level. The dismantling of the former state planning office has left many critical planning and land use service needs unmet. As it was mentioned, there are some of the other functions from state planning office. Some of those programs were simply relocated. But again, the main planning and land use aspect of that office was really reduced. We also do not envision recreating the state planning office as it was, but we are primarily concerned with the lack of state land use policy development and reform, as well as the lack of capacity to provide technical planning resources at all levels in Maine. And today we just really want to reemphasize that importance of rebuilding planning and what it means. To take a step back for a moment, it's easy to overlook one of the most important roles that a planner can have in thinking comprehensively about how things work together. We have land use, transportation, economy, recreation, housing, development, conservation, all these things and more, they all work together. They're interconnected. And it's that basically that interconnection, understanding it is needed not only on a basic level, just for towns on a daily and annual basis, but in the larger term, understanding those interconnections can help form policy at the state level that can really mean the difference, not just between Maine surviving, but Maine thriving. Those interconnections are undercut by land use. Land use has those connections with transportation, with economy, with development, with conservation. MAP has had formal communications with Governor Mills and the Office of Policy Innovation in the Future, and we've highlighted several of the same points that we presented to the committee in our testimony. We highlight the three points we highlight are the need to revive planning at the state level, the need for increased support for municipal and regional planning, perhaps with a little emphasis on really examining how to better improve regional planning. And then the need to strengthen the municipal planning assistance program and update the Growth Management Act. So again, municipal planning assistance program is what remains at the state level for land use planning activity. More is in our testimony on all of these, just a few points on specific to state level planning. There's a great unmet need in providing land use, regulatory and policy input for the legislature and state agencies. Example, of course, we've already heard about the climate action plan, where land use is such a cross-cutting issue for all of the other sectors. Having planning at the state level is really a critical piece. Also to mention some of the policy and resources that are needed. Representative Bailey mentioned carrots and sticks, and Hannah also mentioned the idea of those incentives are important. Excuse me, but actually it's some of the sticks that can be really concerning at the state level is where are the opportunities to make sure that regulatory requirements are not in conflict, to make sure that that new things that come along aren't creating burdens that will hinder development or tourism or impact the environment. Also, planning once served as a bridge between state agencies and was a communication liaison between state and regional and local levels. Rebuilding state planning services can help reduce a growing number of regulatory and policy conflicts within agencies and across different agencies. We've heard a lot from our constituents and members recently about the growing number of inconsistencies with policies and regulations. It's not just from different agencies, but even within agencies. And planning used to be an opportunity to really look at that and understand how when you pull a string from one sector, something is happening in another one, and land use doesn't have its own agency to really address that.
Thank you. Amanda, if you want to wrap up your comments.
Yes. I'll just end with, we would like to emphasize that rebuilding planning at the state level should be done with consideration for planning functions and needs at the state, regional, and local level. And to keep in mind some of the recent statistics that others have pointed out, that 70% of Maine's towns and organized municipalities have no planning staff, have no regional planning access at all. So thinking about the great burden that they have at that level, having increased state participation is pretty critical.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ms. Bunker? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Bunker, for sharing your perspectives. Our next speaker is Mr. Diedesheim. Am I pronouncing that correctly, sir?
Very close. The last name is Diedesheim.
Diedesheim.
Yeah.
Diedesheim, welcome. I'm going to ask each of the next speakers to kind of gently observe a 3-minute presentation.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
All right. Thank you. Good morning, Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, and members of the Committee on State and Local Government. My name is Pete Diedesheim. I'm the Advocacy Director for the Natural Resources Council of Maine, and I really appreciate this opportunity to testify on LD 446. For nearly 45 years, the State Planning Office served Maine well. SPO identified and evaluated trends and challenges facing the state, in particular in natural resources, coordinated economic and natural resource policy development across state agencies, and provided really important technical support to towns to help preserve the character of Maine. If you look at SPO's reports to the legislature, and I've included a link to a page that lists them all, you'll see that the office was addressing really key issues that matter to Maine people, including energy planning, strategies to increase Maine's knowledge-based economy, to raise economic and household income, market trends affecting housing and land use, incentives to keep land in productive farming, fishing, and forestry, and many other topics. SPO was created in the executive branch to help build a sustainable future for the state, for our communities, for businesses, for residents, really with a focus on resource assessment and planning. And in a state where the health of our economy and our environment are so tightly connected, SPO sat really right at the nexus of many critical issues affecting the character of our state. And its title announced that it was in the business of planning. Planning really is important work. As Benjamin Franklin said, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. But then about a decade ago, suddenly planning inexplicably became a dirty word for some, and SPO was dismantled by previous administrations, and its functions were dispersed to other agencies or terminated, and staff were reassigned, or they left government entirely, taking many talents and institutional knowledge with them. We oppose the dismantlement of SPO, and we believe the entire process was a mistake, but we recognize, as others have said, that those staff and responsibilities will not be brought back together again. In lending our support for 446, we're not suggesting that SPO be recreated, although the title of the bill certainly would suggest that. Rather, we're really commending the sponsors' intent of reviving the conversation about the critical functions of government that belong in the executive branch that were terminated or weakened when SPO was dismantled, and to review how those functions might be restored. To further that conversation, it may be useful to amend the bill to initiate a study, as has been suggested, that evaluates Maine's diminished capacity to evaluate key economic, natural resource, and land use trends since SPO's dismantlement. Perhaps a survey of key parties would help bring information forward. Establishment of the Governor's Office of Policy Innovation in the future clearly was a step in the right direction of rebuilding policy capacity in the executive branch. And we do support efforts to build GOPIF's capacity further, particularly in areas that were lost when SPO was dismantled. As an additional contribution to the discussion, I do want to bring attention to one of the many pieces of SPO that was dismantled in 2012 that could be worthy of resurrecting. There was an entity called the Land and Water Resources Council that served as a really valuable forum for discussion, coordination, and policy development across Maine's natural resource agencies and the Department of Transportation and Economic and Community Development. The Land and Water Resources Council focused on a bunch of policy areas like groundwater, hydropower development, public access to the coast, working waterfronts, sources of mercury pollution that cut across multiple agencies. In 2013, the legislature came really close to reestablishing the Land and Water Resources Council under a different name. That bill passed the House and Senate, but was vetoed. And I've attached to my testimony both the statutory language of the original Land and Water Resources Council and the bill language of LD 1427 from the 126th legislature, which may be of interest to reestablish that interagency forum for natural resource planning. So in closing, let me just reiterate my appreciation to the sponsors of LD 446 for bringing these issues forward. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Didesheim. Any questions for Pete? No questions. Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Christina Egan. Welcome to State and Local Government. Good morning.
Thank you. My first time here. Good morning to you, Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, and members of the committee. I'm Christina Egan. I'm the Executive Director of the Greater Portland Council of Governments. We are a membership organization of 30 cities and towns, consisting of the small towns around Sebago Lake, to the most populous city in Maine, Portland, and then in our transportation work, the youngest area, the Saco-Biddeford area. I am very grateful to Representative Bailey for the opportunity to explore strengthening state leadership in planning for Maine's future. Our region, the Greater Portland region, has recently seen influxes of new people, and we aren't alone. That's happening throughout Maine to different degrees. In 2019, we had 400 asylum seekers from the Democratic Congo show up unexpectedly. We needed to find homes for them. In 2020, the asylum seekers have been pandemic refugees. And going forward, we see growth continuing to happen, particularly because remote work makes it easy for people to work in jobs anywhere in the country and live in this beautiful state. And also because Maine is actually one of the most climate safe places in the United States. And we're going to have a new kind of refugee that's already started after the wildfires in Los Angeles and other places. This is good news for our workforce. As we all know, we need younger people here. But it's up to us to make sure that it's not bad news in terms of the state right now that we have is the luckiest state to be the way life should be. We need to think about how to manage growth coming in our future. And we need to make sure that transportation, economic development, zoning, housing, and investments are all coordinated. And working at the regional level, they're siloed right now. They're siloed at the state level, and they're siloed at the jurisdictional level between municipalities, regional governments like ours, and the state. There are two reasons why doing this is really good. The first is for the taxpayer. The research is really clear that if we reinforce our existing villages and downtowns and thicken them up, it saves taxpayers money. We don't have to do as much road maintenance. We don't have to extend our emergency management services as far. Our school busing is more efficient. And of course, we don't have to build sewer and water to far-flung areas. The second reason is it really helps us preserve our quality of place and therefore our quality of life. We don't want our housing to eat up our farms and our fields and our forests to endanger the quality of our water. But we also need to make sure that Maine stays affordable and we can have that workforce here. So we need to build the housing somewhere. So a thoughtful approach to managing this growth does not happen by magic. We are keenly appreciative because of our municipal members that many of our municipalities don't have the resources or the capacity to do planning. And even if they did, the strides cannot be made just town by town. They need to be done in a way that's regional. We all live in sheds. We live in a commute shed, a water shed, a job shed, and we need to plan and grow in a way that acknowledges that. We support LD 446. I have to admit, the SPO was before my time, before I came to the Greater Portland Council of Governments. And I like the idea of a 2.0 or even integrating the functions of what Representative Bailey is suggesting into an existing state office. Alternatively, there are other models that are used around the country in order for the state to coordinate its transportation, economic development, housing, and environment policies and investments. There are many different ways to do this right. We just need to make sure we have the state leadership to do it. So I hope that you can use this bill to explore how to align all levels of government that are working in different issue areas in order to support our collective prosperity and our continued quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see, our next speaker is Eliza Donahue.
So what we're going to send these to is
Eliza.
You said you got
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Sorry, I hear some other voices. Don't want to speak over them.
Yeah. Representative Bryant. Representative Bryant, can you mute yourself? Thank you. Representative Bryant. Okay.
I'll just speak. I'll speak loudly.
There you go. Thank you, Ms. Donahue.
Thank you, Senator Baldacci, Chair Matlack, and members of the committee. My name is Eliza Donahue. I represent Maine Audubon as their Director of Advocacy, and I'm really happy to support this bill today on behalf of our 30,000 members and supporters. So Maine Audubon supports this bill as a way to build climate resiliency for both our human and natural communities, to reduce transportation emissions, to prepare for present and anticipated population growth, and to preserve Maine's character. In order to achieve those things and many other goals that folks before me have stated, our state really needs additional land use planning and technical assistance capacity. You know, again, as folks have said before me, while this might not be achieved in precisely the image of the former state planning office, you know, Maine Audubon robustly supports establishing or reinvigorating technical assistance programs to help build sustainable communities, which is specifically contemplated by this bill. We've heard about the Climate Action Plan that, again, calls for the need for this type of assistance and the need for it quite soon. And you've also heard, and I think it is worth repeating, that planning support for Maine communities is very unequally distributed throughout the state. You know, only 11% of Maine communities have a town planner on staff. 72% have no local planner or insufficient or no regional planning support. So Maine Audubon, we are a wildlife conservation organization, and you know it's that interest that we bring to this bill. Though it's worth noting that thoughtful planning and smart growth principles, which we believe would be supported by this additional state capacity, that while they might encourage vibrant town centers and cities, those same principles also help wildlife and natural resources by keeping development out of sensitive habitats, away from important habitat corridors and intact landscapes that wildlife need to thrive as they move across the state and adapt to a changing climate. You know, the state already has a lot of the tools to help municipalities or avoid or minimize those impacts to wildlife and habitat, But what the state doesn't have is the people power to put those tools to work. You know, one particular example that's close to Maine Audubon's heart and mission is the Beginning with Habitat program, which is based out of the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. They are an incredible resource. They create comprehensive packages for Maine municipalities that include maps, localized conservation strategies. They really empower decision makers to guide growth in a way that, you know, many years from now preserves Maine's quality of place. But they've got about 3.5, full-time equivalent state staff members. That's great. I'm so psyched they're there. Again, they do great work. But 3.5 people, and they're going to be really challenged to get their incredible resources out to the many municipalities that would benefit from them.
Ms. Donahue, if you could wrap up in the next 30 seconds, that would be great.
Yeah, you bet. I'll just end by saying, you know, others before me have talked about the influx of people coming to Maine. Great opportunity, but let's make sure that the things that are attracting people to Maine, our quality of place, are thoughtfully planned for and preserved as they come to Maine. Thanks so much for the opportunity. And I'd like to share that Maine Conservation Voters also, Maine Conservation Alliance is joining us in support of this bill.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ms. Donahue? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming before us. Our next speaker is Nancy Smith. Nancy, good morning. As I said to others, I'm going to try to gently observe a 3-minute time frame. So
I appreciate that. I'll hit the high points of my testimony that haven't already been discussed, although I've loved hearing the word smart growth said several times already. Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, and members of the State and Local Committee. I'm Nancy Smith. This is my 3rd time before you already this session. I'm Executive Director of Grow Smart Maine and live in Monmouth. We were really encouraged by recent conversations with Representative Bailey and fully support his bill with the intention that you've been hearing all along, where he has outlined a vision to reinvent a one-stop shop for municipalities, regional planning commissions, and others to assess planning and development tools and strategies. And I was interested to hear him talk about helping municipalities navigate occasional misalignment of regulations between state agencies and to facilitate regional collaboration. This statewide coordinated effort is going to be helpful for municipalities, regional planning entities, and also the Land Use Planning Commission, which of course is the planning board for the unorganized territory. The tools that we'll have will help meet the increasingly complex issues that are at the intersection of Maine's economy, community, and the environment. Planning to meet increased demand for housing and sustainable communities, as you've heard, as well as planning while there's increased investments in broadband infrastructure, response to evolving markets with fisheries, forestry, and agriculture, and preparing for sea level rise, as you've been hearing repeatedly about the impacts of climate change. We heartily support this strategy of local action coordinated regionally. It was actually the focus of our summit in 2020. Municipalities have clearly demonstrated their skills in addressing crises as they immediately responded to the needs of residents and businesses during the pandemic. That said, municipalities can't be expected to go it alone. At the heart of this proposal is recognition of this urgency to support all levels of planning. Now, we know that this is not a prime time to recommend creation of a new agency, and yet the urgency you're hearing surrounding the Climate Action Plan and the timeliness of the report from the Economic Recovery Committee say that there's also never been a better time for this purposeful realignment and addition of planning development tools at the state and regional levels. I also want to note, in addition to my written testimony, there are 2 full-time equivalent in the Municipal Planning Assistance Program embedded within an agency within Department of Ag, Conservation, and Forestry. They are funded outside of the legislative process, one through a federal program and another through the commissioner's discretion. The legislature has no skin in the game when it comes to local and regional planning and implementation. This is an opportunity to change that. And as you've been hearing in considering this bill, we encourage you to look at other bills that are similar that are encouraging stakeholder groups and studies. In particular, LD 609 and LR 394 and LR 1616. I think as well the Climate Action Plan pilot program will have great value for the discussions as we look at how to best do this. We encourage the committee to give this bill serious consideration and are available to support you in that work in any way that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. I would be helpful maybe if you could share with our analysts those LD or LR numbers so that for the work session we can have that information about what other bills are out there. Are there any questions for Ms. Smith? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Frank O'Hara. Frank, good morning.
Good morning, Senator Baldacci and Representative Matlack, members of the State and Local Government Committee. I'm Frank O'Hara, resident of Hollowell and a former employee in State Planning Office 1.0, according to Senator Bailey. And I've worked in planning as a private consultant at the and also in government at the local, regional, and state level, and submitted some written testimony. And I want to support, you've had kind of an all-star cast of people who are thinking about the future of Maine at the regional and local and state level. So, and I'm in support of all their ideas. I just want to use my testimony to suggest a little bit of a different approach, maybe an amended approach to this issue. And that is I look at the bill itself, it lists 3 different goals for the new state planning office. It's advising the governor, helping the legislature with data and policy analysis, and providing financial technical assistance to local governments and regional. And I would argue that Hannah Pingree's office right now is performing the first 2 of those functions and performing them very well in climate change and in economic development and workforce, children's issues, a variety of things. What's missing is element number 3, that the current Office of the Future doesn't really have integral connection to local governments and to regional governments and so forth. And when the State Planning Office 1.0 was disbanded, as I think Nancy just mentioned, a lot of functions of these regional local functions were scattered around state government into economic development, into the agriculture conservation department and other places. And I would think that as the alternative to creating a new agency to me is strengthening the Office for the Future and giving it a local connection so that when climate change is discussed, there's assistance to local governments and regional governments to do activities there. And the planning activities are integrated, and there's a communication local to state and so forth. And I think that, again, I think that the current office is an outstanding group, a talented group, and they would be the place to do it. And so a first step to me would be looking around at some of those programs, those planning programs that once worked together and were scattered, and bring them back together in the state Office of the Future and expand the role of that office. It's something that could be started immediately. It wouldn't need more money or wouldn't need it wouldn't need immediate more money or a big study. It really is identifying these, bringing them back together and creating an integrated unit. Then there'd have to be some thought about how that would look for the future. But that's my idea, and I just wanted to suggest it to you as you think of your problems. And good luck to you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Hara. I appreciate that very much. And one thing I would probably suggest is, I do think that for the work session, Mr. O'Hara, it might be helpful for you to write up some bullet points that, because the bill itself is thin. So it might be helpful, and I thought Representative Bailey had added a lot of content, obviously. It might be helpful to give us some bullet points that the structure of the office should focus on.
Okay.
So I think it's more important than us trying to speculate, because everybody's going to have, but I do think there are some concrete ideas that you folks have presented that it might be helpful to have those in bullet points as to what you'd want the office to focus on. It might help us in terms of focusing on what we should do.
Okay. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Matt Nixon. Matt?
Thank you, sir.
Good morning. So I'm gently observing a 3-minute rule, though I've bent it a little bit for in some cases. But if you could, keep your comments to within 3 minutes, that'd be great.
That's not a problem. I timed myself this morning. Thank you very much, folks. This is actually my first time testifying. I've been in front of the legislature many times before, but that right was taken from us several years ago as an employee. So this is my first time actually being able to speak to you folks. Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, and members of the Committee on State and Local Government. My name is Matt Nixon. I'm a small business owner of Muddy River Farm Aquaponics, a PhD student, a UMaine, a father, a husband, and a Topsom selectman, though I am by no means submitting this testimony on behalf of Topsom. Rather, I'm submitting this testimony as a private citizen and as a former employee of the Maine State Planning Office. I worked for the Maine Coastal Program for over 11 years, 8 of them serving as the deputy director. Served 3 different administrations, and as a result of the actions of one of those administrations, I ended up working for 4 different natural resource agencies. Keep in mind, I only applied for one job with Maine State government, and that was with SPO. I was hired in 2008 under then Governor Baldacci. Part FF of Governor LePage's first biennial budget proposed eliminating SPO. Representative Toole, I believe you asked a rationale earlier. There was never really a rationale that was provided in written format. My time at SPO was initially the most satisfying professional experience of my life. I worked with the most dedicated and intelligent people I had ever worked with up until that point. The institutional knowledge contained within SPO was beyond value. While there, we worked on things like high-speed internet, renewable offshore energy, grid electrification, and ocean and coastal policy that both promoted and used the best available science and equipment. This all probably sounds pretty familiar. Our job was coordination. As a veteran of Maine State government, I can tell you without question that agencies are siloed. SPO's job was to alleviate some of that compartmentalization through coordination and communication, among other things. As I mentioned before, there was never really any reason given for SPO's dissolution. Most of the talking points at the time focused on government cost cutting. The state actually spent more money on the dissolution of the agency and the repeated musical chairs of the programs than the actual general fund savings to the state. Most of those programs, as has been pointed out, still exist, and many of them are federally funded. The Maine Commission for Community Service, the Maine Floodplain Management Program, and the Maine Coastal Program / Municipal Planning and Assistance Program are all primarily funded by federal grants. Decreasing red tape was also another reason given, despite the fact, and this came up earlier today, SPO literally had no regulatory authority, none. Maine needs a centralized, nonpartisan, non-appointed planning entity with appropriate levels of staffing to work on these issues. As Mr. O'Hara has pointed out in his testimony, 2 of the 3 essentials are there for returning the functions of SPO to the state of Maine. The Governor's Office of Policy Innovation and the Future is the perfect agency to serve as the backbone of those functions. And I also will state there is urgency here. As I mentioned, Maine's municipal planning and support capacity is down to 2 individuals. The Maine Coastal Program, a program designed to assist coastal communities with technical assistance grants, is at Maine's Fisheries Management Agency. I mention this because the Coastal Program literally funds all of the technical assistance grants and coordinating staff of those grants at the Municipal Planning and Assistance Program. As Ms. Smith pointed out, that program is located in the attic of the Harlow building in the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry, and there are only 2 of them. These programs' capacity to accomplish what their establishing legislation demands has been dramatically altered, and as a result of their subsequent dispersal after SPO's dissolution. I'll end by echoing similar sentiments as those before me. The co-sponsors of this bill are absolutely onto something. I would encourage the committee to strongly consider making appropriate amendments where necessary to ensure that Maine's large, diverse, and vibrant communities receive the planning and technical assistance support they need. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nixon. That was great. Thank you for your public service as well. Are there any questions for Mr. Nixon? None. So thank you, sir. Our next speakers are neither for nor against the bill. First one is Rebecca Graham. Rebecca, welcome back.
Thank you, Senator Baldacci and Representative Matlack. I am still Rebecca Graham, and I am still representing Maine Municipal Association on this particular bill. We are neither for nor against, basically because we didn't really want to see the recreation of the State Planning Office. Rather, we'd like to see an expansion of the amazing leadership and work that Ms. Pingree has started with municipal engagement. We see a drastic need for that to expand across a number of departments that municipal officials must juggle. The nexus of all of these regulatory regimes fall squarely at the municipal feet, who are the ones that actually carry it out, and they are often conflicting and problematic, and it's a challenge for folks to actually engage with that. The piece that's we see as really missing, and you're going to see a number of bills this session, as well as in environment and natural resources, that are responding to the symptoms of that lack of coordination and communication. So one of the key things that we would like to see this committee consider is how we can take that municipal coordinating relationship and spread it across all of the entities that end up trickling down. For instance, code enforcement or a single piece of land has to interact with rules from the Department of Environmental Protection, their two divisions, water and land, rules under agriculture, conservation and forestry, marine resources, Department of Transportation, all of them trying to tackle very similar things, all of them sometimes not always conflicting. And when they're made, there's not always that connection piece between what already is existing out there. So we'd love to see that coordination piece expanded. And all of the previous speakers pretty much nailed the municipal experience as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Graham? Seeing none, thank you very much. Our final speaker on this issue is Mr. Lucas, Ben Lucas. You want to, good morning, almost. Could you introduce yourself, sir?
Yeah, good morning, Senator Baldacci. Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, and members of the Committee on State and Local Government. My name is Ben Lucas. I was born and raised in Augusta, Maine, and I serve as the Executive Director for the Maine Jobs Council. The Maine Jobs Council is a new statewide, nonpartisan, member-driven advocacy organization that advances public policies to support the creation and preservation of foundational jobs in Maine. I am here today to testify neither for nor against LD 446. I want to start by commending Representative Bailey for introducing this legislation, and the Maine Jobs Council fully supports developing a long-term plan. That plan should include an informed analyst to make the best possible public policy decisions. We believe the objectives of LD 446 to reestablish the state planning office is only part of the solution. Such an endeavor should also involve a wider group of stakeholders, including those who are providing foundational jobs to Maine citizens. This would facilitate input from companies that employ thousands of hardworking Mainers. Having a comprehensive plan is critical for the economic future and success of our state. Policy solutions should be strategic, long-range, and connected to a long-term vision and plan for the future. Normally, the Maine Jobs Council would support more efficient government rather than expansion, but this expansion, if well done, would lead to a better and more effective government, and the Maine Jobs Council would support that. Thank you for allowing me to testify today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lucas. Are there any questions for Mr. Lucas? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments about LD 446 before I close the public hearing? Lynn, I'm assuming you've taken some notes as we've gone along, because there are a couple of things I and other members have requested.
Yes, I have. Thank you, Senator.
I'm going to close public hearing on LD 446. I know we have one more, is that correct? Or is this, yeah. So what I ask is we could take a break until 12. Oh.
No, we have, excuse me, Senator, we have a meeting with AFA at 1. So hopefully, this is my bill that the treasurer asked me to bring forward. Hopefully, this will not take a long time.
Okay. I just want you, I may have to pop off to another thing at 12:15, but let's go ahead. We have our state treasurer here, and we have LD 472 presented by Representative Matlack. Representative Matlack, you have the floor.
Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over real soon to State Treasurer Beck. This bill is a resolution, and it's a continuation of a bill that appeared before this committee last session. And I'm going to let the state treasurer take it from here, and he can explain all the technicalities of how this is going to work.
Well, thank you, Representative Matlack, Senator Baldacci, members of the committee. I am State Treasurer Henry Beck. Thank you to Representative Matlack for taking on this endeavor. And as she mentioned in her introduction, this topic, and actually this resolve, is likely familiar to returning members of the committee. But I'll just say, just to step back, the bumper sticker here, the big purpose of this LD and previous legislation was to allow my office, in coordination with the state controller, to bring some careful but important modernizations to the way the state receives payments electronically. Our office routinely heard from other state agencies, namely state surplus, support enforcement, child support enforcement under DHHS and others, that a current section of Maine law made it difficult for them to receive certain electronic payments, made it actually legally impossible. So last legislature, we asked Representative Danny Martin to introduce a bill that would allow substantive rulemaking for us to amend that section of law. This committee heard that bill, unanimously passed the bill. It passed both bodies. Governor Mills signed it. We undertook the substantive rulemaking process, had a hearing, had the rules drafted, I recall we had a resolve in front of this committee. It received a vote out of committee, but like many other legislative items, it was not completed because the legislature adjourned due to the civil emergency. So the law is still on the books. So in the fall, we again undertook the rulemaking process. You should have, Ms. McGowan sent and was kind enough to CC me on your rulemaking checklist that includes all that information, includes a draft of the rule. So that's just the procedure and history for some context. And I share it all just to illustrate this has been supported in the past by the committee and by the legislature. It's had 2 rulemaking processes to get us to this point. But the substance of the matter, if you will, is that Section 131 of Title V, within the state treasurer's section, it addresses payments to agencies and the requirement that once an agency receives the payment, they must immediately deposit the payment with the state treasurer, in the state treasurer's primary account, really. That section of law also required that payment could not be subject to fees or deductions, but this resolve and the rules and that LD don't address that portion about fees or reductions. We're talking about the immediacy requirement. Now, I told you that there were some state agencies that said, look, treasurer, this section doesn't work for us when we use what are called third-party payment processors. And as you might imagine, this is a world changing all the time. Technology is changing all the time. Basically, that immediate requirement wasn't working for those agencies that wanted to do business with, say, PayPal or eBay. An example I shared with the committee last year is that the surplus division wants to use eBay to sell state surplus equipment like laptops or office chairs or other things. The law made that impossible. So we came to the committee, said, let us make an exception, but we're going to have major substantive rules. So there's some transparency and some time and we can receive input. So the resolve before you, it's really the final step in adopting those major substantive rules. They appear in your checklist packet. And the major substantive rules say, okay, you can use, when you're using a third-party payment processor, the deposit to the state treasurer's primary account, it can take up to 3 business days, but with some protections. The state treasurer should have the right, after consulting with the state controller, to approve or not those processors. The treasurer should have access to the balances of the vendor to make sure the money is still there. And also, when someone's using that third-party payment processor, they should be notified that the payment may not be immediate. So I know this is a lot of information, kind of an opaque area of payment processes. But basically, this would allow us to say, okay, if an agency wants to use a third-party payment processor like eBay or PayPal, the treasurer and controller will take a look at it. We'll have certain protections in place, and we can use those systems. We think it's a balance between looking out for the interests of the state, being able to use new technology, and also looking out for the interest of payees. So adopting the resolve in front of you that Representative Matlack presented, that will be the final step in adoption of these rules. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Representative Copeland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Treasurer Beck. Certainly appreciate you coming before us and bringing this. It looks like it's helping us move into the future, you know, the electronic reality that we live in. I have one simple. Well, I'm not sure, you know, what type of payments you're taking in for. Like, so if this goes for like people paying their bills. My only thing was that when I was reading that, it says that, and you elaborated on that a little bit, that the payment isn't received until it's in the county treasurer's account. So there may be like 3 days or whatever. My concern is if somebody's paying something on one day, they don't get credit for it for 3 days later, and they might get late fines or not have signed up for something in a timely manner. Does that apply to this?
It's something that the treasurer and controller would have a right to inquire about with the vendor. That is the reality of sort of payment systems. You know, when you go to pay your credit card bill, you're waiting for it to reflect on your balance. Sometimes it takes time. So it's something that we would have the ability to inquire about, and we could say, well, we're not going to approve this vendor. So for example, I'm going to use the child support scenario. Support enforcement has long, and I don't want to speak for them, they may actually be here this morning. They've long talked about some sort of, you know, kiosk payment network at CVS. So rather than writing, you know, if the state is collecting your child support, rather than writing a check, sending it to support enforcement and recovery, but by mistake it ends up at our office and people are calling, and it takes time to be reflected on their balance that's due. Support enforcement could engage a vendor to provide that service, and that is something we could inquire about. How soon will this be reflected on a payee's balance? The substantive rule does require that payee is told, look, this won't be immediately paid to the treasury. It might take up to 3 business days, but that's common in the marketplace.
May I follow up, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. That's good information. That talks about how it affects somebody's account when they're sending it in, but I'm concerned on the other end. I'm concerned when it's received. Is somebody like using your example, when you pay your credit card, it doesn't show up, but when it does show up, it shows up on the date that you initiated the transaction. Will that be the case, or will that be an issue here?
It's something we could inquire about, and that could be, we might not approve a vendor if we're not satisfied with their process and how that might work for both parties on both sides of the transaction.
Thank you. I'm just concerned about the citizens of Maine and their expectation that when they pay it, it's paid. So I understand that that's how these payment processors work and all that. I just wanted to find out more. Thank you so much for that information.
Thank you, Representative Copeland. I'm assuming, Treasurer Beck, that people are going to receive an email confirmation as soon as they make the payment, or some sort of system like that is going to occur. But I guess if you can inquire further, just to allay Representative Copeland's concerns, because when you go on as a citizen to pay something, you want to make sure you understand there's a lag sometimes, and so if you could answer some of those questions, that would be helpful. Are there any other questions for the treasurer? Is this something we want to move immediately to a work session and just approve it, or anything that makes it easier for the state to collect money is in everyone's interest? Representative Toole?
I would say with the quality of the technology in the State House today, no.
No, not have a work session right now? Okay.
I don't think it's such a hot idea just because of the technology and the thing.
Okay.
Otherwise,
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll have it on a very soon work session. Okay, any other questions or comments? Ms. Caswell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to let everyone know that the attachment I sent with this rulemaking, the first 2 pages tell you what a committee's role is in the major substantive review. And the second page has a list of the quote unquote criteria that you use in evaluating. So you can check that beforehand, and I will make sure that there's answers, or I can answer questions about that criteria. But it's the second page on the attachment that I sent you.
When was that attachment sent?
I believe I sent it yesterday.
Okay.
And if anyone doesn't have it, just let me know and I can
Okay.
resend it.
Okay. Treasurer Beck, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, but just this is a bit unique for a work session, as Ms. Castle pointed out, but we're happy to provide any further information for the committee as you do that analysis.
Okay. Representative Matlack, did you wish to say anything else on this? Bill, you're
No, thank you, sir. I understand what the state treasurer is asking for, and I agree with Representative Toole that with the issues he's been having today with his communications, that probably another day when we can all talk about this in a better format is great. Thank you, Mr. Beck, for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we will close public hearing on 472. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I just have a quick question.
Yes.
And that is, I've been looking, do we know if we've gotten the link to go to AFA at 1?
Yes, we have. And
okay.
Just so people know.
Then I'll go back and check.
Just so people know, and Representative Matlack, I also have Health and Human Services, so I'll be going back and forth between those two.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Have a good lunch, and I think we're adjourned. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So the link was sent from AFA?
Yes, it was. It says AFA committee panelist link.
Was that sent today?
Yeah, it was sent, I'll tell you what time. It was sent at 8:04 today.
Okay.
And it does say right on the top, AFA committee. And I can resend it to you if you'd like me to.
That would be great because I do not have it.
Okay, I'm gonna forward it to the whole committee just in case.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheryl?
Yes.
I didn't know if Will had told you, but I need to join the Judiciary Committee at 1, so I won't be on this afternoon.
You got it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thanks.
So Senator Rosen, I just sent it, so you should get it any time now. And I just got it again, so.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
I'm sorry for all the promotion.
You are fine, Representative. You are fine.